He had always considered himself a healthy and ordinary person. He worked a regular job, spent time with friends and family, and enjoyed simple hobbies like reading and walking in the evenings. But one morning something changed. It started with a dull ache in his right ear, a minor discomfort that he thought would go away on its own. He ignored it at first, thinking it might be from sleeping on that side or from a slight cold. By midday, the ache had grown sharper. He tried to shake it off, thinking it was temporary. He sipped water, adjusted his position while sitting at his desk, and even massaged around his jaw and neck, hoping for relief. Nothing helped. Each pulse of pain seemed to echo through his head, making it hard to concentrate on his work. He winced with every movement and rubbed his ear repeatedly, hoping the pain would soften. That evening, the pain worsened. It wasn't just an annoyance anymore. It had become a constant throb that gnawed at his patience and energy. The dull ache had turned into sharp, stabbing sensations that came in waves, leaving him tense and restless. He tried using over-the-counter painkillers, hoping for relief, but they barely made a difference. He applied a warm compress as his friend had suggested, but even that brought only temporary comfort. Every sound around him seemed louder, sharper, more unbearable, making him want to retreat into silence. Sleep that night was nearly impossible. Lying down made the pain intensify, and he tossed and turned in frustration. The throbbing seemed to grow with every heartbeat, keeping him awake for hours. He got up several times, sitting on the edge of the bed, trying to find a position that would ease the discomfort, but nothing worked. He felt helpless and exhausted, and a deep worry began to creep in. This wasn't normal, and he knew it. The next morning, the pain had not eased. It felt like it had multiplied, now spreading slightly to his jaw and neck. He noticed a ringing sound in his ear that wasn't there before, a high-pitched noise that made concentration impossible. Every word spoken to him sounded distorted, every noise in the street amplified. Even the usual comfort of a warm shower offered little relief. He realized that this was no longer something he could ignore. He decided to confide in his sister, hoping she might have some advice. She listened patiently as he described the pain, the throbbing, the ringing, and the restless nights. She frowned and suggested that he see a doctor immediately. He hesitated, trying to convince himself that it might still be minor, maybe an infection or wax buildup. But deep down he knew this wasn't just a small problem. Something unusual was happening, and it needed attention. On the way to the clinic, he felt a mix of anxiety and relief. Anxiety because he didn't know what the cause was, and relief because he was finally taking action. Sitting in the waiting room, he watched other patients come and go. Some seemed calm, some anxious, some in pain. He felt a strange connection to them, understanding the uncertainty and worry that illness brings. His thoughts wandered to what could be causing this intense pain. Could it be an infection? Or something worse? He tried not to dwell too much, but his mind kept circling possibilities, each more alarming than the last. When his name was called, he felt a rush of nervous energy. He walked into the examination room, greeted the doctor, and explained the situation in as much detail as he could. The doctor listened carefully, asking about the onset of pain, any other symptoms, past ear problems, and general health. He described every sharp sting, every pulse, every sleepless night. The doctor nodded, taking notes, his expression thoughtful but calm. The examination began. The doctor used a small instrument to look into the ear, checking for visible signs of infection, blockage, or damage. The usual culprits didn't appear. No visible wax buildup, no redness suggesting a common infection, no fluid behind the eardrum. He felt a small twinge of worry, realizing that this pain might have an unusual cause. The doctor asked him a few more questions, exploring recent activities, changes in environment, or possible injuries he might have overlooked. He thought hard, but nothing seemed relevant. It all added to the tension, a quiet suspense that both the patient and the doctor shared. After the initial examination, the doctor leaned back slightly and explained that the cause of his pain wasn't immediately obvious. He suggested more detailed tests to get a clearer picture, assuring him that it was best to understand the problem thoroughly before deciding on treatment. The patient felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. Relief because a professional was taking his pain seriously, and apprehension because the uncertainty added a new layer of anxiety. He left the clinic that day with a scheduled follow-up and instructions to monitor any changes in symptoms. The pain continued, sometimes sharp, sometimes dull, always present. He went about his day with difficulty, careful with movements, avoiding loud sounds, and constantly aware of the throb in his ear. Even routine tasks felt burdensome as the constant discomfort reminded him that something was wrong. Days passed, and the pain persisted. Each evening he repeated the same rituals, trying painkillers, applying warm compresses, adjusting his sleeping position. Nothing provided lasting relief. He started to notice small changes, moments of dizziness, a subtle loss of balance, and a strange sensitivity to certain sounds. These details heightened his unease. He knew that the next doctor visit would need to reveal the root cause, because living like this was becoming unbearable. His friends and family noticed the change. Normally cheerful and active, he had become withdrawn and tense. He avoided social gatherings, preferring the quiet of his home. His sleep was disrupted every night, leaving him tired and irritable. His sister insisted on accompanying him to the clinic for the next appointment, sensing that he needed support. He was grateful, though slightly embarrassed by his own vulnerability. The experience had stripped him of his usual confidence and routine, leaving him exposed to something he could not control. By the time he returned to the clinic, he was mentally preparing for a range of possibilities. He reminded himself to stay calm, to listen carefully, and to ask questions. The waiting room felt smaller this time. The sounds of other patients amplified in his sensitive ears. When called in, he took a deep breath and followed the nurse into the examination room, ready to face whatever the next step would reveal. This was no longer a minor ache or a simple problem. It was an intrusion into his daily life that demanded attention, courage, and patience. He sat on the examination table, hands clasped tightly, as the doctor entered with a thoughtful expression. The doctor began by reviewing the notes from the previous visit, asking again about any new symptoms or changes. He described the ringing, the occasional dizziness, and the relentless pain. The doctor listened intently, nodding and asking clarifying questions, his demeanor calm yet serious. Then, with a steady hand, the doctor prepared for a more detailed examination. This time he used specialized instruments and took extra time to inspect every angle of the ear canal and eardrum. The patient's heart raced with a mix of fear and anticipation. Every moment felt charged with suspense, as if the answer to his suffering was about to be revealed. The doctor's careful attention reassured him, even as the uncertainty weighed heavily. As the examination progressed, the doctor's expression shifted slightly, a subtle sign that something unusual had been discovered. He paused, looked closely, and then said, "I see something unexpected here." The patient's pulse quickened, a mixture of fear and curiosity flooding his mind. What could it be? Something lodged in the ear? A rare condition? His imagination ran wild with possibilities, each more alarming than the last. The doctor explained that to understand fully, further investigation was necessary. He would need to perform additional tests to determine the exact nature of the problem. The patient nodded, trying to steady his breathing. The uncertainty was uncomfortable, but he trusted the doctor's expertise and knew that uncovering the cause was essential. He left the clinic that day with instructions and a sense of anticipation he hadn't felt before. The pain remained, but now it was accompanied by a strange mixture of hope and tension. He spent the next few days trying to continue with his life, but the relentless discomfort reminded him constantly that something was out of the ordinary. He began to reflect on the fragility of health and how quickly a seemingly small problem could dominate one's life. The story of the first part ends here, capturing the journey from ordinary life to the unsettling experience of a severe, unexplained ear pain. The stage is set for the shocking discovery that awaits him, leaving the reader eager to know what the doctor will find and how his life will change after that moment. He returned to the clinic the following week, carrying a mixture of hope and apprehension. The ear pain had persisted, sometimes worsening, sometimes dull, but always present. The sleepless nights, the throbbing discomfort, and the constant awareness of the problem had begun to take a toll on his mood and energy. He was grateful for the support of his sister, who had insisted on accompanying him again, sensing the anxiety he was feeling. She walked beside him as they approached the clinic, offering quiet encouragement and reassuring words, though he could feel her own concern beneath her calm tone. Inside the waiting room, the sounds of the clinic felt louder than usual. Each cough, each ringing of the phone, even the whisper of the nurse's footsteps seemed amplified in his sensitive ears. He tried to focus on other thoughts, on trivial memories or plans for the day, but the pain and the anticipation of what the doctor might find occupied most of his mind. Finally, his name was called, and he followed the nurse into the examination room, his steps hesitant yet determined. The doctor greeted him warmly, his calm demeanor helping to ease some of the tension. They began by discussing any changes since the last visit. He described the persistent pain, the occasional dizziness, the strange ringing that had begun to interfere with his daily life. The doctor listened attentively, nodding, asking questions about the intensity, the location, and any triggers. Each answer was noted, each detail considered, showing the thoroughness of the approach. Once the history was reviewed, the doctor began the physical examination. This time he used a more detailed instrument to look deeper into the ear canal. He carefully moved the device, examining the eardrum and surrounding areas. The patient held his breath with each movement, his body tensing involuntarily as the sharp waves of pain occasionally flared up with the slightest touch. The doctor's hands were steady, precise, and professional, which helped to calm some of the patient's nerves. The initial examination revealed nothing typical. No obvious infection, no visible wax blockage, no inflammation that could explain the intense pain. The doctor paused, a thoughtful expression on his face. He explained gently that while nothing common appeared, that didn't mean the cause wasn't serious or unusual. He suggested further tests to get a clearer view, reassuring him that finding the exact cause was essential for proper treatment. The patient felt a mix of relief and apprehension. Relief that the doctor was thorough and considerate. Apprehension because the unknown cause weighed heavily on his mind. The doctor recommended a series of imaging tests and possibly a minor procedure to take a closer look inside the ear. He explained each step in simple language, making sure the patient understood the purpose and the process. He emphasized that though the situation was unusual, it was manageable with careful attention. The patient listened closely, trying to absorb the information, nodding when appropriate, but inside he felt a rising tension. The thought of tests and procedures made him anxious, yet he recognized the necessity. Over the next few days, he underwent the tests. The imaging showed a faint irregularity, something that didn't look like the usual patterns of infection or blockage. The radiologist's report hinted that further examination might reveal the unusual nature of the problem. He waited nervously for the follow-up appointment, feeling each day stretch long with discomfort and anxiety. Every sound, every movement seemed to remind him of the persistent pain that refused to relent. During this waiting period, he reflected on how suddenly life could become disrupted by something so unexpected. Activities that had been simple before, reading, walking, listening to music, now seemed impossible or uncomfortable. He had grown accustomed to the constant presence of pain, yet each day he hoped for an answer that would bring relief. His sister checked on him daily, offering meals, encouraging walks, and providing the emotional support that made the burden easier to bear. Her presence was a small but significant comfort in a time that felt heavy with uncertainty. Finally, the day of the follow-up arrived. The doctor reviewed the tests carefully and began a more detailed examination in person. The patient described any changes since the tests, noting the intensity, duration, and character of the pain. The doctor listened, made notes, and prepared for a thorough inspection using specialized tools. The room was quiet, save for the gentle hum of equipment and the occasional instruction from the doctor. Every detail was observed, every angle inspected as the doctor sought to understand the exact nature of the problem. As the examination progressed, the doctor's expression shifted subtly. He paused, leaned slightly closer, and indicated that he had found something unusual. The patient's heart skipped a beat. His mind raced through possibilities, each more frightening than the last. He watched the doctor's careful movements, trying not to let panic take over. The doctor explained that while it was an uncommon finding, it was identifiable and treatable. Relief and apprehension mingled inside him. Relief that there was a clear cause, apprehension about what the discovery meant. The doctor took time to explain the options, including the procedure needed to address the issue. He described the steps, the care involved, and the expected outcomes. He reassured the patient that while the situation was extraordinary, it was manageable, and that proper treatment would likely bring significant relief. The patient absorbed each word, feeling the tension in his body slowly release, replaced by a cautious hope. The anticipation of finally addressing the root cause was daunting, yet empowering in its own way. Over the next few days, he prepared mentally for the procedure. He read information provided by the doctor, asked questions to clarify details, and followed recommendations for care beforehand. Each day he continued to deal with the pain, but now there was a sense of purpose and direction, a clear path toward resolution. The ongoing discomfort reminded him of the urgency, and he approached each moment with a mixture of patience and readiness. His sister remained a constant presence, helping him focus on daily tasks and providing comfort during moments of stress. They spoke often about practical matters, shared memories to lighten the mood, and prepared together for the upcoming visit. The support reminded him that he was not facing the situation alone, that there were people who cared deeply and who would help him navigate the experience. The emotional reassurance was nearly as important as the medical care itself. When the day of the procedure finally arrived, he felt a mix of anxiety, relief, and determination. He arrived at the clinic early, accompanied by his sister, and checked in. The medical team greeted him warmly, explaining each step before beginning. The environment, though clinical, felt reassuring due to the professionalism and care of the staff. He was reminded that while the cause of his pain had been unusual, he was in capable hands. As the procedure began, he focused on his breathing, trying to remain calm and steady. The doctor explained what he was doing at each step, providing reassurance and updates. He felt occasional discomfort, but nothing compared to the persistent pain he had endured over the past days and weeks. The careful attention of the doctor and staff helped him remain composed, giving him confidence in the process. After the procedure, the doctor explained that the unusual problem had been identified and treated. The patient felt a mix of relief, surprise, and curiosity about what had caused such persistent pain. The doctor took time to answer questions, explain follow-up care, and provide guidance for recovery. The patient left the clinic with a sense of gratitude and cautious optimism, knowing that he was on the path to relief and recovery. The experience had been eye-opening. He realized how easily life could be disrupted by something unexpected, how ordinary routines could be upended by sudden pain, and how much courage and support were needed to navigate medical challenges. He reflected on the patience, professionalism, and care of the medical team, feeling thankful for their expertise and guidance. The story of this part concludes with him ready to face recovery, carrying both the lessons learned and the hope for a return to normalcy, yet aware that the next steps would continue to unfold with surprises and human experiences yet to be revealed. The day of the discovery arrived quietly, yet with an invisible weight of anticipation. He entered the clinic with the same anxious feeling he had carried for weeks, his steps careful and deliberate, his mind filled with questions and uneasy possibilities. His sister accompanied him, offering quiet support, understanding the silent tension he carried with him everywhere he went. Inside the waiting room, the familiar sounds of the clinic seemed sharper than before. The rustling of papers, the soft chatter, the beep of a monitor, each amplified in his sensitive ears. He tried to focus on breathing steadily, grounding himself, but the ache in his ear reminded him that this was the moment he had both dreaded and hoped for. When his name was called, he followed the nurse into the examination room. The doctor greeted him with a calm, professional demeanor that offered a measure of reassurance. They reviewed the patient's history and the results of the recent imaging tests, both of them fully aware of the unusual nature of the case. The doctor explained that what they were about to see was rare and that careful attention would be needed. The patient listened intently, his mind racing through every possibility, each more alarming than the last. The doctor began a meticulous examination, using specialized instruments designed to provide a detailed view of the inner ear. Every movement of the tools was deliberate, slow, and precise, and every adjustment made the patient tense in anticipation. He held his breath, gripping the edge of the chair, as the doctor carefully navigated the narrow ear canal, his experienced eyes searching for anything that could explain the relentless pain. Then, finally, the doctor's expression changed subtly, the calm of professionalism mixed with a hint of surprise. He paused and looked at the patient with a steady gaze. "I see something unusual," he said softly. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that made the patient's heart race. He tried to keep calm, but a mix of fear, curiosity, and relief surged through him. He had been living with this pain for weeks, searching for answers. and now an answer was within reach. The doctor explained carefully that the unusual finding was something that did not belong in the ear, something that had likely gone unnoticed for a long time. He described it as small but significant, and that its position was causing the severe pain and discomfort. The patient's mind struggled to comprehend the reality. How could something so small cause such relentless agony? The explanation was clinical, precise, and factual, yet it did little to quiet the whirlwind of emotions inside him. The discovery was both shocking and relieving. Shocking because the cause was unexpected, something he never imagined could happen to him. Relieving because at last there was clarity. The persistent pain, the sleepless nights, the constant worry, they all had a reason. Finally, the invisible enemy that had disrupted his life could be addressed. The doctor's words gave him a sense of direction, a plan to resolve the issue, yet the unusual nature of the problem kept his mind alert and tense. The doctor outlined the next steps. A minor procedure was necessary to safely remove or treat the source of the problem. He explained the steps, the precautions, and the expected outcomes, ensuring the patient understood the process fully. He emphasized the rarity of the case, the care required, and the importance of precise handling to avoid complications. The patient listened closely, absorbing each detail, feeling a mix of apprehension and hope. The fear of the unknown was still present, but now it was coupled with a tangible path forward. In the days leading up to the procedure, he felt a growing awareness of his vulnerability. The experience had stripped away the sense of invincibility that he had once taken for granted. Every simple action, every sound, every moment of discomfort reminded him of how quickly life could be affected by an unexpected health issue. Yet alongside this awareness was a growing sense of determination. He was ready to face the treatment, ready to regain control over his body and life. He spent the waiting days reflecting on the experience. The sleepless nights, the frustration of being unable to function normally, and the emotional weight of persistent pain had changed him. He had become more empathetic toward others facing health challenges, more patient with the unexpected difficulties life could present. He had also learned to value the support of those around him, the calm presence of his sister, the professionalism of the medical staff, and the careful guidance of the doctor. These reflections provided a quiet strength as he prepared for the next step. When the day of the procedure arrived, he approached it with a mixture of anxiety and cautious optimism. He arrived early, accompanied by his sister, who helped him navigate the final moments of tension. The medical team greeted him warmly, explaining each step and ensuring he was comfortable. The environment, clinical yet reassuring, allowed him to focus on his breathing and mentally prepare for what was to come. Every detail had been arranged to maximize safety and minimize discomfort, and he felt a measure of trust in the hands that would guide the process. As the procedure began, he remained as still as possible, focusing on the rhythm of his breathing. The doctor explained each step, providing reassurance with every movement. He felt occasional discomfort, but it was nothing compared to the weeks of persistent pain he had endured. Each moment of the procedure was guided by expertise, precision, and care, which allowed him to relax incrementally, trusting that the relief he had longed for was close. The moment of removal or treatment was precise and delicate. The doctor carefully addressed the unusual object or condition, ensuring no further harm would occur. The patient could feel the subtle release, a shift in pressure, a change in the relentless ache that had been his constant companion. Relief began to seep in slowly, a sensation almost alien after weeks of persistent pain. The doctor observed carefully, confirming that the treatment was complete and that the source of the agony had been successfully addressed. After the procedure, the doctor explained the findings in detail, answering questions and providing guidance for recovery. The patient listened intently, his mind still processing the shock of what had been discovered and removed. The object or condition was rare, unusual, and unexpected, yet it had a clear impact on his life. The combination of relief, surprise, and curiosity left him emotionally exhausted, but gradually lighter than he had felt in weeks. He spent the following days resting and allowing his body to recover. Each moment without the relentless pain felt like a gift, a chance to breathe more freely and regain a sense of normalcy. He noticed subtle changes immediately. The sharp throbs were gone, the ringing had diminished, and his sleep was becoming more restful. The relief was accompanied by gratitude. Gratitude toward the medical team, toward his sister for unwavering support, and toward the resilience he had found within himself during this challenging time. The discovery had been a turning point, a moment where uncertainty transformed into understanding and action. He reflected on the weeks of anxiety, sleepless nights, and unrelenting discomfort, realizing how quickly life could be disrupted by something unexpected. The experience had left him more mindful of his health, more patient with the unknown, and more appreciative of the people who offered support in difficult times. The emotional weight that had been so heavy was slowly lifting, replaced by a cautious hope and the beginnings of a return to normal life. He began to think about how easily pain and discomfort could become invisible burdens. The weeks of living with the unknown had been exhausting, yet they had also revealed his capacity for endurance, for patience, and for emotional strength. He recognized the importance of seeking help promptly, trusting professionals, and leaning on those who care. These lessons were becoming clear in the quiet moments after the procedure, when the relief was tangible and the fear of the unknown had subsided. The story of this part concludes with him fully aware of the unusual cause of his pain, having undergone the careful procedure to resolve it, and beginning to experience the first real moments of relief. The human experience, the fear, the anticipation, the shock of discovery, and the relief of resolution, is captured in these moments, leaving the reader eager to follow his journey through recovery and reflection in the next part. After the procedure, he felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. The weeks of persistent pain, sleepless nights, and constant discomfort had left him drained, and now, for the first time in a long time, there was a sense of release. The relentless throbbing that had haunted every movement and every thought was finally easing. He could feel a subtle lightness in his head, a freedom from the constant pressure that had dominated his life. The relief was almost surreal, a sensation he had forgotten existed in its true, uninterrupted form. The doctor explained that while the procedure had successfully addressed the unusual cause of the pain, proper care and patience were necessary for full recovery. He was advised to rest, avoid any activities that might strain the ear, and monitor for any changes in sensation or discomfort. The doctor also emphasized the importance of follow-up visits to ensure healing was progressing as expected. The patient nodded, absorbing each instruction carefully, appreciating the thoroughness and attention to detail that had guided him through this entire process. In the first few days after the procedure, he focused on rest and recovery. Even simple activities felt different now, breathing without the constant distraction of pain, moving without anticipating sharp twinges, and lying down without fear of aggravating the ear. Each small moment of comfort felt monumental. The human body's resilience and ability to heal became more apparent with every passing hour. He realized that even though the cause of his suffering had been unusual, the process of recovery required patience, self-care, and awareness. His sister continued to support him, preparing meals, helping with daily routines, and providing emotional encouragement. Her presence was a calming force, a reminder that he was not alone in navigating this experience. They talked often, reflecting on the past weeks and discussing plans for returning to normal life. The conversations were light, filled with humor and gentle teasing, a welcome contrast to the tension and worry that had dominated their days. These moments of connection reminded him of the human need for companionship and support, especially during times of vulnerability. As the days progressed, he began to notice tangible improvements. The sharp pain that had once seemed unrelenting was gone, replaced by a mild sensitivity that gradually faded. The ringing in his ear diminished, and his sleep became more restful. Simple pleasures like listening to music, conversing with friends, and enjoying quiet moments alone became sources of joy again. He felt grateful not only for the medical care he had received, but also for the patience and strength he had discovered within himself during this challenging period. The doctor scheduled a follow-up visit to assess the healing and ensure there were no lingering issues. During the appointment, the doctor carefully examined the ear, confirming that the procedure had been successful and that recovery was progressing well. He provided guidance for continued care, emphasizing the importance of listening to one's body and seeking help promptly if any new symptoms arose. The patient felt a deep sense of reassurance, knowing that the unusual problem had been addressed and that the path forward was clear. Over the next few weeks, he gradually resumed normal activities. Returning to work, socializing with friends, and engaging in hobbies that had been sidelined became possible once again. The sense of freedom from pain allowed him to focus on life in a way he had not experienced for weeks. The experience had changed him, heightening his awareness of his own body, his health, and the fragility of daily routines that are often taken for granted. Each moment of normalcy was now more meaningful, appreciated with a newfound sense of gratitude. He reflected on the journey from the initial sharp pain to the shocking discovery and eventual treatment. The experience had been both challenging and enlightening. He had faced fear, uncertainty, and discomfort, yet he had also witnessed the effectiveness of careful medical attention, the value of support from loved ones, and the resilience of the human spirit. The lessons learned were subtle but profound. Patience, attentiveness, trust and expertise, and the importance of seeking help when something felt wrong. Throughout his recovery, he remained mindful of the changes in his body. He practiced gentle routines to maintain balance, avoided situations that might strain his ear, and prioritized rest when needed. The awareness that even small symptoms could indicate larger issues had been reinforced by this experience. He approached daily life with a cautious optimism, prepared to notice and respond to his body's signals, but also confident that he could manage challenges with the support and knowledge he now possessed. Emotionally, he experienced a shift as well. The anxiety and frustration that had dominated his days gave way to a sense of empowerment and gratitude. He had endured a rare and intense situation, navigated the uncertainty with patience, and emerged with clarity and relief. The emotional weight of weeks spent in pain and worry gradually lifted, replaced by a calm determination to maintain health and appreciate the ordinary moments that had once been overlooked. He also thought about the people who had been part of this journey. The medical team, with their expertise, care, and professionalism, had been instrumental in resolving the issue. His sister's constant support provided emotional stability and encouragement. Friends who had checked in and offered kind words reminded him of the value of human connection. These reflections reinforced the lesson that even in medical or personal challenges, the presence and care of others are vital components of recovery and well-being. The relief he felt was not only physical, but also mental and emotional. The unusual cause of the pain had been addressed, the uncertainty resolved, and the path forward made clear. He could finally focus on life without the constant interruption of discomfort. The experience had tested him, but it had also provided an opportunity for growth, introspection, and appreciation for both health and the people who support us during difficult times. By the end of this period, he felt like a new version of himself, more aware, more grateful, and more resilient. The memory of the pain remained, a reminder of the fragility of the human body, but it no longer dominated his daily life. Instead, it became a point of reflection, a marker of a challenging journey that had been navigated successfully. The sense of relief, freedom, and renewed energy allowed him to re-engage with life fully, appreciating the ordinary moments and the extraordinary resilience that carried him through. The story of this part concludes with him experiencing the first true moments of relief and recovery. The medical challenge had been met with courage, expertise, and support, leaving him with not only physical healing, but also emotional growth and a deeper understanding of himself and the human experience. The stage is now set for the final part, where he reflects on the lessons learned and the ways in which this unusual experience will continue to shape his perspective and approach to life. Life slowly returned to normal after the procedure, but the memory of the severe ear pain remained fresh in his mind. He reflected often on the weeks of discomfort, sleepless nights, and uncertainty, realizing how much it had impacted not only his physical health, but also his emotional well-being. The experience had forced him to slow down, to pay attention to his body, and to acknowledge that even small symptoms could have larger implications. He carried these reflections with a sense of gratitude and newfound awareness. He began to notice how ordinary life could be disrupted in an instant by something unexpected. Simple routines, once taken for granted, had become almost impossible during the weeks of pain. Listening to music, engaging in conversations, or even lying down comfortably had been affected. Now, as the pain subsided and his body healed, he appreciated these simple moments more deeply. He realized that health is often invisible until it is threatened, and its absence can dominate every thought and action. The experience had also strengthened his sense of patience and resilience. Living through relentless pain had taught him to endure discomfort without panic, to follow guidance and trust in the expertise of those helping him, and to remain hopeful even when answers were not immediately available. Each day of persistent pain had been a test of endurance, and coming through it had given him confidence in his ability to navigate challenges. He understood that resilience is not just physical, it is emotional and mental, shaped by how one responds to uncertainty and discomfort. He reflected on the role of support in his journey. His sister's constant presence had been invaluable, from accompanying him to appointments to offering quiet encouragement at home. Friends who checked in and offered kind words had reminded him that he was not facing the challenge alone. Even the medical team, with their professionalism, patience, and clear communication, had provided a sense of safety and assurance. He realized that recovery is not just about medical treatment, but also about the emotional environment surrounding a person. Feeling supported, understood, and cared for is essential to healing. With the physical pain now gone, he began to focus on restoring his daily routines and regaining a sense of normalcy. Returning to work, re-engaging in hobbies, and spending time with friends became enjoyable again. The simple pleasure of being able to participate in activities without discomfort was a reminder of how much had been taken for granted before. Each small victory, whether it was a full night's sleep, a day without distraction from pain, or a long conversation without ringing in his ear, became a source of gratitude. He also began to notice a shift in his perspective on health and self-care. The experience had highlighted the importance of listening to one's body and seeking professional help without delay. He understood that unusual symptoms should not be ignored or minimized. The weeks of pain had been difficult, but they had also taught him that proactive care and timely medical intervention are vital. He became more attentive to subtle changes in his body, more willing to ask questions, and more appreciative of the expertise of healthcare professionals. Emotionally, he felt a sense of maturity that had come from navigating an unusual and challenging situation. The fear of the unknown, the frustration of persistent pain, and the relief of resolution had all shaped his understanding of himself. He had learned to manage anxiety, to practice patience, and to maintain hope in the face of uncertainty. These lessons were subtle but significant, forming a foundation that would influence how he approached challenges in the future. He reflected on how quickly life could change and how important it was to be prepared for unexpected difficulties. The experience had been a reminder that even ordinary lives can encounter extraordinary challenges. It had taught him humility, patience, and empathy, not only toward his own struggles, but also toward the experiences of others. He realized that everyone faces hidden battles, and the way they navigate them shapes their resilience and character. In his quiet moments, he often thought about the weeks leading up to the discovery, the tense waiting for appointments, and the uncertainty of living with persistent pain. He recognized the courage it had taken to face those days, to continue moving forward despite discomfort and anxiety. This reflection brought a sense of pride and accomplishment. Enduring pain and uncertainty, seeking help, and following through with treatment had been a journey that strengthened both body and mind.